He is a laureate from Columbia University, not Ned Phelps, Joseph Stiglitz, in support of the price of inequality. If I'm a conservative and I want to read this book, why should somebody to the right of Charles Plosser read this book?
Well, I think it gives you some insight into the sources of inequality, into the consequences of inequality, and into what can be done about it. Maybe the most important idea is the following: that the standard wisdom is that there is a trade-off between growth or efficiency and inequality. We could only get
more growth
if we
with
give
inequality.
Up. Yeah. And what I try to explain is that a lot of the inequality, not all of it, but a lot of the inequality is a result of rent-seeking, distortions in the economy, disparities between social and private returns. And so that if we could get rid of this rent-seeking, get rid of these misalignments, we could actually get a more efficient economy, a higher growth, and an economy with less inequality.
Let's get this core quote out of the way, and then I do want to cover rent-seeking here. There'll be a pop quiz at the end of the show. Measures of income inequality don't fully capture critical aspects of inequality. America's inequality may, in fact, be far worse than those numbers suggest. There's a thing called a Gini coefficient, which is how the pros measure inequality. Does it get it right for America?
Well, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that there are many dimensions to inequality. For instance, there's not only the inequality of income, there's the inequality of wealth, which is greater than the inequality of income by almost any measure. There's inequality of opportunity. You know, America likes to pride itself as being the land of opportunity. In fact, you know, we all know stories of people who've made it from the bottom to the middle, middle to the top. But what matters from an economic perspective are, what are the statistics? What are the chances? And we have less equality of opportunity than any of the other advanced industrial countries.
Let's nail this. Gary, Indiana, 2 Nobel laureates. That's pretty cool. You and a guy named Samuelson.
That's right.
Not bad. Could Joe Stiglitz have done today what you did when you were a kid in Gary, Indiana, given the skew of inequality today?
Almost surely not. I mean, I was a beneficiary of a good public education system. I was a beneficiary of opportunity to go to a good college, Amherst College. But if you look
stop. Break exclusive. Joe Stiglitz says Amherst is a good college. It's a great college. Robert Frost taught there.
That's right. But in fact, if you look at the statistics, only 8% of the enrolled in these elite American universities come from the bottom 50% of the population. In other words, they're populated by those by the elite.
8%. Okay, let's look at this chart here. We welcome this. We needed to do this for Stiglitz just to keep him bored. Look at this. The IS curve is trapped. It's a liquidity trap. When you look at that IS curve, folks, that is shifted with a vengeance. This is a Krugman-esque chart, I would put it. Joe, when you look at that chart and you look at the liquidity trap that we're in right now, how does that filter into inequality?
Well, one of the things that's going on right now is that we have high levels of unemployment. This is one interpretation of why we have a high level of unemployment. I've talked about other structural transformation. But when you have high levels of unemployment, there's downward pressure on wages, and stocks may do okay, although they're not doing. But what that means is workers are doing very badly, and those at the top are doing relatively well.
But the conservatives would say, yeah, but that's the way it always is. So what?
Well, it's not the way it's always been. The level of inequality in the United States is much, much higher than it was, say, 3 decades ago. The percentage of income going to the top 1% has doubled, and the percentage of income going to the top 1/10 of 1% has tripled.
Bring up the rent-seeking quote, if you would, here. It's a jargon alert, folks, and this is very cool. This is like 19th century. I got to put my glasses on to read this. Victor put the screen over in Toledo. It might seem strange that as inequality has increased, we have been doing less to diminish its impact, but it's what one might have expected. And you go into great length, both in your book and in your wonderful Vanity Fair article, about rent-seeking. What is rent-seeking?
Well, First, what are the concept of rents? Rents are things that you get not because of what you do, but like the rent on land, just because of your ownership claims. Right. Now, rent seeking is efforts to get those kinds of income, not by contributing to society, but by getting a larger share of the economic pie. So an example, monopoly rents. You get not because you are producing more, but because you've restricted production, and that gives you more profits.
You say the financial system that you with Sandy Grossman and Robert Merton studied and others, the financial system is the leader of rent seeking and leads to this inequality. Discuss that.
Well, if you look at the people who are at the top, among the people who are at the very top are those in the financial sector and those CEOs of other corporations. Now, why do we call those rent-seeking? Well, the pay that they get are not directly related to their contribution to society. We saw that in the crisis of 2008. They received huge bonuses even as they contributed to putting the global economy at the brink and even diminishing the income of the companies that they were in charge of.
Let's look at a myth right now. Bring it up here. Here's the quote. No, that's not it. That's David Blanchford. There it is. Still another myth, as he lines up the myths in the price of inequality, is that the poor people have only themselves to blame. Andrew Mellon, the unemployed are jobless because they are lazy. They haven't searched hard enough. This is like out of my grandfather in the 1930s. Do people still talk like that?
Yes, they do. And some people have said the reason that we shouldn't extend unemployment insurance is because that would discourage them from search.
Robert Barrow would say there's a lot of work that shows they don't go search.
Well, the problem is that right now, there are no jobs. You know, there was this example, McDonald's advertised 50,000 jobs, 1 million people showed up. Now, if you encourage more people to search, maybe you'd have 2 million. But is that going to mean more jobs? No.
On inequality, what is the common ground between Joe Stiglitz and John Taylor of Stanford?
I think we would both probably agree that inequality is not a good thing. But where I think the big difference is, I think that by getting rid of some of this rank-seeking, some of this government giveaways, paying too much for drugs, allowing the mineral companies to get our resources at below competitive prices, those kinds of things, that we would have a more efficient economy. So I don't see there being a trade-off between inequality and efficiency. I think we can have more equality and more efficiency, more growth. And I think the right tends to see there's more of a trade-off. And what they say is everybody benefits from giving more money to the top, trickle-down economics. The evidence is so strongly against that view that, I don't know if any particular economists would say that today, but because the evidence is so strong against trickle-down economics.
You and I could go for hours here. How do you define laissez-faire?
Well, laissez-faire is the notion that if you just let markets on their own work.
We saw how well that worked.
Exactly. But the basic point is laissez-faire by itself is always a myth because somebody has to set the rules of the game. And how you set the rules of the game determine how markets work. If you give priority to derivatives, that means that you're encouraging derivatives. So you have to have rules that would determine what happens in bankruptcy. And what we've done is given preference to derivatives, and we've decided that students can't discharge their debt no matter what.
Romney or Obama as president next time around, how do we move away from a plutocracy to more equality? What's your single advice to either candidate for this term?
Well, I think the two things we have to do is education and tax reform. It's absolutely essential that we have a fair tax system, and one that directs our economic activity to production, not to speculation. And if you have a tax system in which people at the very top pay half the rate of somebody who is working hard for their income, simply because they get their income from speculation, that's an unfair system, and it's a distorting system. and it leads to lower economic growth.
Let's leave it there. Joe Stiglitz, thank you so much. Folks, the book conservatives should read, just to get the brain going, The Price of Inequality.